Welcome to Denver Startup Week. I'm Tammy Dorr, President and CEO of the Downtown Denver Partnership and co-chair of Denver Startup Week. This year marks the 10-year anniversary of Denver Startup Week. DSW has been the catalyst for lots of change over the past decade. And this week, we're coming together to celebrate the past and dream big for the future. We are able to bring Denver Startup Week to this community thanks to our 2021 sponsors. Thank you to our HQ and title sponsor, Amazon, and our title sponsors whose leadership makes this week come to life. Capital One Cafe, Downtown Denver Partnership, Fluid Truck, Hotel Engine, and WeWork. And our track sponsors who have made all of the great content you're hearing today possible, our founder track sponsor, Kickstart, growth track sponsor, Friday Health Plans, developer track sponsor, Quizlet, product track sponsor, Palantir, our designer track sponsor, Battery 621, and the Public Works, people track sponsor, Exactly, and spotlight event sponsor, Strat Labs. Our headline event sponsors are bringing the excitement to the week. Thank you to B-Side Fund, Colorado Public Radio, Comcast, Coors Brewing, Denver Pavilions, Entrepreneurship at the University of Denver, JP Morgan Chase, Method, Moss Adams, Pi Insurance, Promontory Mortgage, Path, Southwest, Tattered Cover, and VF Venture Foundry. Finally, thank you to our partner and member sponsors, all listed on the screen. Please say thank you to these companies as you enjoy our hybrid Denver Startup Week. And don't forget, use the hashtag DenStartupWeek to share your experiences and moments of inspiration on social media. Have a great week.
Yeah.
Hey boss, Mountain West Q2 forecast 2.3 million.
Nice. Are you kidding me? Come on.
Ugh, another one.
Welcome to Denver Startup Week. I'm Ashley.
And I'm Emma. We are the People Track co-chairs and members of the Denver Startup Week Organizing Committee.
As a committee, we feel it's important we acknowledge Indigenous people as the original owners of the land on which we reside, which is the traditional territory of the Ute, Cheyenne, and Arapaho peoples. We acknowledge the painful history of genocide, ethnic cleansing, forced removal, stolen land, and forced occupation of their territory. And we honor those who have stewarded this land throughout generations and all other Indigenous tribes and nations who call Colorado home. With that being said,
we thank you for joining us for the 10th anniversary of Denver Startup Week. At Denver Startup Week, we strive to make all of our sessions a space where attendees can connect, learn, and grow, regardless of age, gender identity, gender expression, race, ability, sexual orientation, or the combination of those identities.
There's something for everyone at Denver Startup Week. Thanks to all of our community members who submitted their best content to make this week happen.
Thank you to our sponsors for their support in helping us keep Denver Startup Week free and accessible for all, especially our People Track sponsor, Exactly.
The People Track is about all things people. It encompasses the knowledge, insights, and values needed to build inclusive cultures, teams, and communities.
On that note, please enjoy this session and the entire Denver Startup Week.
Hello, everyone, and hope you enjoyed that introduction from Denver Startup Week. And we're about to begin. And I just want to let you know, I'm kind of, I am handling questions and answers. So if we can, if you have like a burning question that you want to ask, feel free to use the Q&A feature that you may or may not have access to, depending on if you're using this, you're in the actual Zoom webinar, or if you're on watching this through YouTube, then you might, I'll share my Twitter handle and you can send questions to me and I'll answer them after this presentation. But if you're in the Zoom webinar right now, there's a Q&A feature that you can use. Also, if you are deaf and hard of hearing, there is live transcripts. They should show up on your kind of interface for Zoom, and that also should be true for if you're watching this through YouTube. And with that, I am going to, and we also have a sign language interpreter, and which is really awesome. And thank you for the Denver Startup Week for being able to do that last minute, because I forgot to make sure to check up on that, and they really came through. So I just want to thank them for that. And with all of that, let's just get started. I'm going to share my screen, and then I'm going to, if I share my screen, and hopefully you will see my slides. So this is how to pitch accessibility. I want to welcome you all. I am Crystal Preston Watson. I am a senior digital accessibility analyst at Salesforce. And if you have any questions for me after this event, please feel free to reach out to me on Twitter at Scopic Engineer, or you can connect with me on LinkedIn. It's the LinkedIn URL with Crystal Preston Watson at the end. So pretty easy to find me. And let's just go over the agenda for today. I'm going to go into kind of my background for this talk and kind of how it came about and how I thought of it. Then I'm going to get into kind of how to prep and people and allies you want to secure, like as you go through and building your pitch deck. Then we're going to talk about gathering information and data. Then after that, actually creating the deck, then talk about how to practice, and then get into some Q&A. So yeah, let's get started. So first off is background. And I just kind of wanted to get into how this came about. As I said, I currently work for Salesforce, but I've worked and been and lived in Denver for quite a long time. And a lot of that has been me contracting and working for different smaller companies and startups. And this slide before you, I'll sometimes describe slides if they have context or meaning for those of us who are blind and hard and low vision. This slide has a illustration of the Denver skyline with a head of a that's supposed to be me of a woman with Afro puffs in the background of the city skyline, and so and that's kind of how I feel. I've been I've lived throughout Denver for a while. I've worked through different in different startups and smaller groups. And before I even got into accessibility, I was concerned about it as a quality engineer, as a QA engineer, a tester. That's something that, making sure that the features, the products that I was testing were good and working for those that it was meant for. And as a lot of if you work in startups, is that the one thing you'll hear about that is really, really pushed, especially if it's a very early stage startup, is MVP. And for those of you that may not know the term MVP stands for minimum viable product. And it's really kind of it's the version of the product that that you want to get out kind of early to your customers, your audience. A lot of times there might be demos. They might just be like landing pages and things like that. And kind of the features of an MVP are that it has value to people they to see if they're willing to use it or they're willing to buy it, that you get early adopters and, it'll inform on kind of future and development. And that's something that I would constantly hear at these places that I would work. It's like, oh, we got to get the MVP and we got, and as a tester, as a quality engineer, a lot of times that meant when I would find issues, I would find bugs, that those things were kind of like, well, that's fine. You found those. That's not going to really matter for the MVP. We need to get it out there. And it kind of, for me, it always made me kind of question. It's like, okay, I understand that we want to make sure that we're getting our products out there, but what's the purpose of an MVP if there's issues and bugs and things like that? And specifically, as I've gotten into accessibility and worked really kind of advocating accessibility at startups, that is also one thing. It's like, not only when it comes to issues and bugs, also accessibility of like, well, we'll deal with that. We'll add that in the future, because unfortunately, and this is for startups, large enterprises, accessibility is seen as a nice to have or something that we will add to a future, as a future feature once we get past MVP. But the thing is that, and if you don't know kind of how MVP came into use among startups, it was really Eric Ries, who's the author of The Lean Startup, who kind of really brought about having an MVP for startups, into the startup kind of environment conscience. And he defines an MVP as a minimal viable product is that version of a new product which allows the team to collect the maximum amount of validated learning about customers with the least effort. But the thing is, if you look at this definition, and this is kind of the kind of, beginning, the pure definition of an MVP, and it's kind of definitely taken on a lot of other contexts and meaning from this original, from its original conception. But the thing to really get is that accessibility and MVPs aren't mutually exclusive. There is nothing in the definition, the actual building of an MVP that says accessibility cannot be there in the very, very beginning of that product. And my thing is that it should be. If you actually are trying to get early adopters, you are trying to get the most people to buy and use your product, accessibility is a great way to make sure that you are reaching as many people as possible, and people aren't going to have barriers to your product because it is accessible. And I want to just note this article, which is a really good article, which is called "How Does Accessibility Fit into MVP?" Onia and Marcy wrote this. It was a guest blog for Microsoft, and I will probably put this in the chat later so you can have the link to that article. But it's really good talking about how accessibility fits into an MVP. So, again, kind of this is something that you're going to probably come up against as you go to advocate for accessibility within your startup. So this is a really good article to kind of read before, during, and after as you're making your case and making your pitch. So we're going to go on how to prepare and also talk about some allies that you would need to have as you kind of go and navigate this process. So the quote on a screen is from Grace Hopper, and it says, "It's easier to ask for forgiveness than it is to ask for permission." And I put this on, I wanted to put this out there because what you're about to do, a lot of times you have to decide how you're going to go about this. You could ask for permission to investigate and look into the accessibility of your products, of your features, of the startup you're at. And sometimes that will happen. And if it does, that is great. That is a lot of the hard work already done of getting people to kind of like official buy-in. But a lot of times, I'm going to be completely honest, that's not going to happen. And it's one of those things of accessibility is important. And, some people don't see, you're trying to make the case so they can actually see it. So my thing is like, you can try to get, permission, but sometimes, and especially when it comes to accessibility, you just kind of have to go for it and then just ask for forgiveness later, because it's one of those things of it's important. Not everyone understands, but I think this is one of those times where it's like, yeah, I could not do it, but I'm going to do it. That's kind of the focus and the perspective I take. And I am trying to create people like me throughout all these different startups because I like technology. I like to use things. And it's really hard if I get excited about a product that's new and I want to be an early adopter. I like being first. I like doing things, and I can't because of some accessibility issue. And there are many people like me with, different sort of disabilities that also are in the same thing of wanting to use startup and new things that are blocked because of inaccessible products and features. So that's one thing that you're going to have to ask yourself. Do you want to get permission, or do you just want to seek forgiveness? And another thing that you need to kind of think about is your workload. And the image on the screen right now is of a man kind of rubbing his temple in kind of frustration, tiredness, and things like that. I'm not going to say that this is, you're adding another thing to your work life on top of what you do to your day-to-day. And we all, a lot of us who have worked at startups know that you can wear very many hats and very many roles. So it's, It's so you need to think about, is this something that you can really take on? I am one of like, I really, this is very important. Accessibility is a civil and human right. But at the same time, you can't overload yourself. You can't burn yourself out for trying to make this case. And so I really want you to think about, is this something that I can do? I have the bandwidth for, because if you don't, please don't, try to take all this on and really cause yourself harm. It's important, but you're important as well. So that's something that, before you even really get this, down to like brass tacks of putting this all together, you need to ask yourself, can I take this on top of all the other stuff that I do? And if you answer that question, it's like, I am going to take that stuff on. I'm going to take this task on. I am going to make this case. I'm going to put together this pitch deck and show the people that are at this company that accessibility needs to be built into our products. Then another good thing that you want to do, and another important thing that you should do, is get buy-in from kind of people, lateral to you and, and around you. And so there are some important roles that you would want to get, have allied to you. And some of those roles are sales. Sales, if you have people in sales, they're, one of the things is they're trying to, get customers in. They're trying to make, they're trying to make that money for the company, and, really getting, having sales understand that accessibility really is appealing to customers and future customers. And, having that buy-in from sales is very huge, because a lot of times you'll have executives, you'll have leadership who are thinking about that, and having someone on sales who's like, hey, that, they're right. We need to, accessibility needs to be in there. That's a huge important role to have. Next is, product managers, because these are these are the roles that are, kind of stretching out, kind of keeping things on task. So you'll get sometimes pushback of like, well, we don't have time. We can't do this. We can't fit it in. And if you have a project manager, and product managers allied with you are like, yeah, but, it's like, we can fit this in. This is important. We can make this happen. That's another way that you're heading off these different questions that might come about. UX, again, when it comes to accessibility, there really is a shift left into making sure that accessibility is getting into products and features from the very first, from the beginning, and having UX, they're really concerned, about accessibility, who understand accessibility and who are really championing it, with you, really also, says it's like, well, we have someone here that, is designing and building our products, the design of our products, who understands and who really thinks this is important. So again, another kind of concern that you can head off with a important role allied with you, and developers, because a lot of times that will come down with things like, well, it's like, well, will this slow down our developers? And I'm not going to get super into this because I could, because this is something I do kind of on a day-to-day, or just until recently, of working with developers and UX on kind of the day-to-day of building accessibility into products and features. And the thing is that, if you want the most value in, with accessibility, having that in from the very beginning, having developers and UX and people trained on the best practices for accessibility, it not only, do you get accessible products, but you get really strong products because they're built strong, they're built with best practices. So it's, and a lot of developers understand that. So having them, kind of make that case on the coding side, the programming side, really is going to help you in the long run. And so once you've had these conversations, you've started to get, you're starting to get allies on your side. Now you need to kind of gather your information and data on, with the actual and so this is the thing, we're going to put together a pitch deck. And so, but we need to do some analysis on, where there are particular issues in your MVP or your product that your startup is, building and putting out to market. And the one thing that you want to do, you don't want to just focus on every single thing. What you want to do is really look at the high impact features. You are going to be one person, maybe you have someone else that's really helping you out with this, but you have other tasks, you have other responsibilities. So you really need to streamline what you're going to do. So what you want to focus on is your high impact features. And those are going to be your features that are heavily used. They have a wide customer base and critical need. And so those type of features are going to be your login and sign up, sales carts, and forms. Those are the things that, anything that is, mission critical to your features, to your product. That's what you want to focus on, because these are the things that are really going to catch the attention of, in your pitch deck and of the execs and leadership that you're presenting to. So don't, it might seem like, well, I'll just start with the front page and then go from there. No, just, again, make sure you're using your time wisely and just really start to focus on your high impact features, identify those and then use those to really make your analysis of accessibility. So now let's talk about what to look for. There are certain things that you want to look for to make sure and evaluate are your high impact features accessible. Some of those are keyboard accessibility. Keyboard accessibility is very, very important. One, because if people can navigate your site just with the keyboard, one that will that's something that is really it really is. It doesn't seem like it's a huge thing, but it really is. It's one of the most valuable things when it comes to accessibility, because making sure that focus order, tab order is logical, that there are no keyboard traps. A lot of assistive technology like screen readers and other and switches and other assistive technologies use keyboard inputs. So if you're making sure that your website, your features are keyboard accessible, you are making sure that a lot of other assistive technology can also access your site. You want to make sure you have alternative text for your images that convey meaning and context. And again, this is for people who are blind and low vision, and also people with cognitive disabilities who will use screen readers, and they can have access to what images, and they will know what your images are, which is very important, because a lot of times your images, you have graphs and things like that, are conveying meaning. And if you don't have alternative text, then you are really leaving out a lot of people who won't be able to access that. Enlarging your text to 200%. This is, especially if you have a feature that is mobile, a native application. I tend to use a lot of accessibility features on my phone. I use a screen reader on my phone. And one of the things I do is I do a lot of magnification, zoom. And a lot of times I will go to a site, and when I try to, enlarge text to read it, it doesn't really enlarge well. It causes the pretty much the page, the feature becomes inaccessible to me. And so this thing of just making sure that that your content really, it's flexible, can flow to magnification is a huge thing for a lot of people. And this is not just, again, depending on your demographic and your customer base, this is something that, for even people who may not describe themselves having disabilities, who just may be older, this is something that, they will use. And a lot of people use this without even realizing that they zoom in on text. And so making sure that this is something that your features do is very important. Color contrasts on text and backgrounds. Again, this is something that happens a lot on different products and features. There's just poor color contrasts. And it makes things very inaccessible for people who are blind and low vision, also people who have color blindness. And honestly, a lot of times, sometimes color contrast is so just bad that people who don't have a visual impairments can't see things. So making sure that you're checking for that is a really, really huge a thing. But again, it may not seem so, but it really is a really huge value. And captions and descriptions, especially if you are a product or a feature that has a lot of media. You want to make sure that, one, you are providing captions or ASL interpretation like we have today, because that is hugely important. And again, if you don't have this type of thing, especially if you're a company that's, a multimedia company provides media, you are blocking so many people from your content, from your feature, and from your product. And also audio captions and audio transcripts. Again, you may not, notice this on like Netflix and like HBO Max, but for many of their movies, they have audio descriptions for blind and low vision. And, it really makes a huge difference that, someone, like me who like has low vision, sometimes, I have turned on and audio description, and it's made a big thing of things I just didn't catch because I can't see it. And that's a huge impact. And honestly, that adds, just having that feature makes me kind of like, for some products, I'm like, hey, this is really awesome that they really thought about this, didn't have to, yell or ask for this. And, this was out of the box. And honestly, that's a good way to gain customers, to gain loyalty, which I know is a huge thing for pretty much every company out there. And it's that you want the people to not just buy your products, but that you have right now, but future products. And one way you do that is customer loyalty. And one way to get customer loyalty is to get there before they even need it. And that's and so again, that's just, this list is just kind of some of the things that you would want to look for. There are kind of checklists and other lists that will kind of show you some of the things that you can look for in your high impact features. I will link to that after this presentation, so you can have that. I didn't get into web content accessibility guidelines with WCAG. That is something that you should know about because it's a series of standards and that's been adopted internationally by companies and governments. But I didn't want to kind of overload you with a lot of this because though it's important, it can be overwhelming for a lot of people, especially if you're new to accessibility. So I think I'm going to give you that I'm going to give you that link to those standards, but and also give you a link that kind of matches a checklist to those standards. But again, you aren't doing a huge accessibility audit. This is for pitch deck. And let's kind of go on, because I know I spent a lot for that, but this is very important. This is kind of the meat and potatoes of what your pitch deck is going to stand on. So these are the kind of the tools and devices that you're going to use. One is the keyboard. And like I said, keyboard accessibility is very, very important. Also, this is something that, again, you don't have to have any specialty tools for it. You're going to have a keyboard, and it's really, it's a low barrier of entry to do this type of evaluation and testing. Just really navigate your keyboard, navigate your site just using a keyboard without a mouse. Screen readers, most computers, popular computers on the market have built-in screen readers, or there are some free screen readers that you can use. And some of those are JAWS, which are Windows. That's not free, but you can use it for Windows. NDVA is also for Windows. It is free. And VoiceOver on Mac OS and iOS. It also, that is default. It comes installed in your MacBook or your iPhone. And TalkBack, which is Android, usually it's free. Either it'll come installed on your phone, or you can get it from the Google Play market. One caveat: if you don't know how to use a screen reader, I wouldn't use the screen reader, just because I would rely on the keyboard testing more so, because it can be overwhelming if you don't, depending on how much time you have. If you have the time to train yourself to get lessons and do tutorials with screen readers, I say go for it. But if you don't, if you feel overwhelmed, you feel intimidated, it's okay. And you can, there are other important tests that you can still do that will allow you to really examine and evaluate accessibility. And some of those are browser extensions and developer tools. These are things that you can get onto your pretty much Chrome, Firefox, Edge, and most of them are majority of the ones I'm listing here are free, or they have a free component and then you can pay for them if you want. Those are Wave, which is by WebAIM, and that's a free one that you can do, and that would allow you to, it'll do a kind of scan of your site. Axe, another one that's by DQ. Again, that it's also does a accessibility scan. Lighthouse comes in the developer tools for Chrome, and you can, again, another scanner, another another extension. An accessibility scanner. This is on Android phones. You can get it through the Google Play Store, and it will do an it'll do scan for accessibility issues for native apps and just mobile web. I want to say with these are not tools that you can just run and be like, they found everything. These are things to just kind of give you a glimpse of issues that might be on there. The way I use these tools, they're a jumping off point. These are not, it's not the end all be all of accessibility. But again, as someone kind of jumping in there, you are, this is really to help you. Again, this is not but you're not doing a full blown accessibility audit, accessibility evaluation of your site. Again, this is really to gather information and data for your pitch. And color contrast analyzer, there are some, really good ones out there. From the Pacquiao group, I think W3C has a contrast analyzer. Again, there are quite a few out there. Again, this is a really good one. It's not the end all be all, but it's a really good jumping off point. It's a really good way to kind of get some of that, get a clue on some of those issues that are on your product. And this is section is called Lawyers, Puns, and Money. One of the things that comes up, and as someone who's been in accessibility kind of advocacy and just and who've worked in companies as accessibility professional, there are some legal consequences about not being accessible, depending on if you are a company that works with the federal government, you're a nonprofit, with government funding, if you are working with higher education and other, and other, not just higher education, but just higher education, other educational organizations. It's one of the things that sometimes this is what you need to talk about when it comes to accessibility. You need to be aware of it, and good places to really kind of, I don't want to dissuade you from doing this, but it can get into a really sticky situation if you throw out, we can be sued, because it's, that may be possible, but it's not just straightforward of like, we're going to be sued right now, right away, if you don't fix all these. And honestly, that can have a opposite effect with some people, but it is something to be aware of. And it's something that companies should have, clarity into. So I would say, definitely do some research. Lainey Feingold is a disability rights lawyer who's specializes in technology. I absolutely love her. And you can, follow her. She's on Twitter. She also has a website which really does a really great job of just breaking down kind of bigger American with Disability Act and accessibility lawsuits and other legal issues. And I will, again, I'll put that into the chat when I'm doing Q&A. It's good to kind of have note of these things and recognize these things, but this is not something that you want to lead off with. And just with a lot of this, I want to make sure that, and right now on screen is so an individual that has their hands on the desk, and there's a clock that is reading 8 o'clock, if I can read analog clock correctly. And this is just to say, you need to make sure, again, like I said, make sure you have focus and of what you're doing. You're focusing on those high impact features and you're prioritizing your task. Again, if you don't really feel comfortable using a screen reader, you don't know how to use a screen reader, you have limited time, don't use a screen reader. Focus on keyboard accessibility, focus on using some automated tools, and do your examination that way. Okay, so we have gathered a lot of data, and so now we're going to put together our deck. So if you've never, one of the things that, I at one point wanted to, I had an idea for a startup. I started working with individuals about, putting that and making that work together. And so I read a lot about pitch decks and how to, do a pitch, how to give a pitch, what you needed to do with the pitch. And one of the things that really, came up was Guy Kawasaki's 10-20-30 rule, which is you have 10 slides. You should take no more than 20 minutes to take to present your slides. And that way you have like 10 minutes to, kind of answer questions, and that you use 30-point font because you don't want to really overload your audience with a lot of details, because again, you're trying to make your biggest points. You're trying to make most impactful points. So that's exactly what you're going to do with this. You are making a pitch for accessibility. You want to make sure you're hitting on the most critical things to really, because the thing is that, like I've said, accessibility is seen by a lot of people as a nice to have, as something that they don't need to do. And it's really, if you don't have that really critical punch and impact, it's going to kind of get lost. It still might be, and I'm just going to be honest with you. Accessibility, fighting for accessibility in companies, in technology companies, is hard. I'm not going to like sugarcoat it. So, but if you want to give yourself a fighting chance, you really need to make the most impact right away. And this is how I really saw, like, especially when it comes to a lot of making presentations from a lot of people in very kind of high up, like, executive C-level people in bigger companies and leaders who are running in like startups and smaller companies. This is probably the best way I can see, because you only have so much time. You really need to make that impact. And so this is going to putting, just 10 slides together with your most valuable information that you've gathered is really the best way, I think, to have some of these conversations. So let's talk about your 10 slides. And so your 10 slides that you're going to want to have for this pitch are going to be, you want to kind of start off with your problem and opportunity. So you want to talk about, your problem, kind of the opportunity that you can see. You want to talk about value proposition, feature analysis, internal allies, and current status. And these slides for each of these, each of these 5 sections should have about 2 slides each. Maybe if you don't need, if you need one section to have 3 and then the other section to have 1, but you want to keep it in, you want to keep it to about 2 slides each, and really kind of go from there. So let's break down of what each of these sections would talk about. So when you have your problem and opportunity slides, you're going to talk about the problem you're solving, and that's, it's more of the problem that you can put it in the word solving. It's really hard. It's like the problem that you're approaching to deal with, which is accessibility, and who has the problem. And really, we know that, and that is your company, us, and together, and really put it as us, not a you type of thing. That, again, you are part of this company. It is really that we have this, we have this issue. We are really, and we need to kind of talk about how to approach this. And this is where you're going to kind of talk about some of the analysis and examination of your high impact features, and really talk about how this is an opportunity to really go forth and really, really improve and innovate with your startup, and the startup's product. The value proposition slides, pretty much what you're going to do with this is talk about your, some of your competitors. Value proposition is usually this in other kind of startup like pitch decks. It's like usually kind of talks about the comparison to other well-known companies. So maybe this is a good place to talk about legal issues, and talk about, there are some legal issues other companies have had when it's come to accessibility. This is probably the place you can talk about, like, hey, so and so, X company, has some, accessibility issues, and this is what happened on, when people, kind of people called them out. This is kind of some of the things that they went through. And so really kind of like, this is kind of some of the hit they took. And, it really, so you're going to, this is a good section to be like, we don't have to go through that. Our value right now is that we're going to address this before even we get called out. So this is a good section to kind of make that comparison. So feature analysis, and this is where your data is going to come in, and this is where you're going to lay out some of your biggest and most serious issues. Again, you're not going to probably put every single thing that you find. You're going to probably put some of your most grievous and most just kind of serious issues that really make that impact. Again, you're going to have about 2 slides. You don't want to overload things. So again, really focus on, like, if you have a cart that that is completely keyboard inaccessible, that's where you're going to put that there, because that's a huge thing. It's like, hey, people can't buy things if they're just using a keyboard. That's going to make a huge like impact to someone. It's like, if people can't buy the very thing that you're selling, it's going to matter. And internal allies, this is where you kind of, this is where you're going to get thoughts from the people that you've talked about, those important roles about, accessibility from their perspective. Like I said, if you have a sales cart that it prevents people from buying things on your site, get the perspective from the sales ally that you've talked to, because that's going to that's something that's huge. And and really drive home that this is not just something that it's important to you, but it's also important to a lot of other people at the company. So just really, this is just a section that you get some choice quotes from your internal allies. And current status. This is the time to really just drive home that you currently do not have an accessibility process or plan. This is maybe time to pitch about getting an official audit, from a third-party vendor to really examine and see where some, for the greater product of where you have issues and problems at. I wouldn't get too deep into talking about funding, but just a hint in that. It's really just, hey, we have some issues. We don't have any current plan. Let's start to formulate that right now. Okay, so we've put together our, we've organized our deck. We've kind of put it all together, and it's just now you need to practice. Practice just makes perfect. On the screen is a man that's looking away from it's the iPhone doesn't the iPhone's not even on. This is a stock photo, but it's just being he's practicing. So but practice makes perfect. And I'm not saying you need to be get up there and be you're doing some Wolf of Wall Street, Jordan Belfort talk. I have social anxiety. As you can see, I kind of, even when I do practice, even when I really know some things, it gets a little bit, so don't, practice in just that, you are comfortable with the information, not to be you need to be pristine in what you're doing, because I am awkward. It's, and the thing is, it's it's okay. But, usually my passion kind of shows through. And with that, I know we only have about 6 or 7 minutes, but if we want to do some questions, I don't know if I didn't see any in the chat, but I am ready to take any questions. Also, if you don't want to ask them right now, I can, again, you can ask me on Twitter, and use the hashtag DEN Startup Week. So I know it's about this particular session. But yeah, is there any questions? Let me look into chat. Oh, okay. I don't see any questions. So I'm gonna I don't know if I'll give it a little bit, just like a minute or two. I know I don't want to take too long, and you might be also going to another session, but yeah, so this is again, I just want to reiterate, while I, wait a little bit to see if any questions come in, that again, it's a thing. When it comes, this is kind of knowledge that I put together just from my time at smaller companies, at startups, about how to make the most impact when it comes to getting accessibility in. I really don't like the narrative, the kind of stereotype that accessibility drags product development, that it prevents innovation. Because the thing is that accessibility really drives innovation. Really, when you are truly making a product that is accessible to the most people out there, it really does take, kind of creativity and ingenuity to make sure that this product is going to work for the most people out there. So when we're talking about MVPs and getting things out to the market fast, that doesn't mean that you need to block people from accessing that. And then it seems counterintuitive to me to talk about, well, we need to get this out there in front of the most people, from everyone, and you're blocking a good portion of people. Like, it's, the thing is that, accessibility is needed. People with disabled people spend money. Disabled people use entertainment. People, like, they participate in entertainment. They do, disability doesn't mean, it's like I sit in a corner and cry about and cry about, like, well, I can't do anything like this. That is just not that is just not true. And we really need to start building products day one to make sure they're accessible. And we need to make sure that, that we're really thinking about that when we're building things. So that is it for me. I didn't get any questions, and that is definitely fine. So I am going to bring this to a close if I don't get any in the last few minutes. And so I want to thank you all for watching this. I want to thank my interpreter, Amber, for interpreting me. I know sometimes I can get lost in my thoughts. So thank you so much for that. I also want to thank Denver Startup Week and the people and the organizers for doing just a very fantastic job with this. And with that, I am going to close out this session, if I can remember how to close it out. Okay. Okay, I'm gonna close it out now. I will see you all later. I don't know how to. Oh, in meeting. Goodbye.